Welcome to our Amud Yomi Shi'ur, Daf Mem Tes Amud Aleph in Maseches Shabbos. Shi'urs for Ilu Nishmas Ovi Moira Menachem Ben Akiva. Lefuas Esther for Bash Shoshana Malcolm. Yeah, Iboilahu. We are in the fourth line of Mem Tes Amud Aleph, and in the Mishnah we're describing and delving into what the Mishnah told us, the previous Mishnah. The Mishnah, I'd read the Mishnah again. You can, if you want, flip back to the first Mishnah in B'metoimnin, in Mem Zayin Amud Beis, and there it says B'metoimnin, meaning what are the materials that are considered to be Moisif Hevel, and which ones are not. Moisif Hevel means something that if you put your pot into a Moisif Hevel a matter, then it will actually cook it, make it hotter, not just preserve the heat, but will add heat and cook, right? That you're not allowed to do on Erev Shabbos, because then maybe you'll come to store it in gecholim, in coals, and be mechata. So now you're not allowed to do that. And the Mishnah said you're not allowed to be toimen with gefes, zevel, melach, sid, chol. These were all types of things that are always moisif hevel, regardless to whether they're dry or moist. Now we are focusing on the second part of the Mishnah that I'm going to read slower. Now the second part of the Mishnah says, Veloy beteven, you're not allowed to be matmin in teven. Teven is hay. Veloy bezagin, this is the refuse, the skins of the grapes. Veloy bemuchin, muchin is important to know, is all kinds of old rags, clothes, or sometimes dafka, some new fabrics that you're going to make a nicer fabric from, but they're always like small, like fleece kind of things. Veloy basovin, not with asovin, with weeds. Lizman shen lachin. Oh, those items are only moisif hevel when they are moist. Yeah, when they are naturally wet. I said naturally. That's going to be a question. Aval toimnin ben kshem yeveshin. If it's dry and not moist, it's not doesn't have the humidity, then it does not add hevel, and you're allowed to be matmin in that on Friday. And that's going to be exactly the question. How you define something that's moist and therefore moistif hevel? Somehow the wetness, the moist, adds heat, right? To that matter. Iboilu. Now comes the question. Lachin machmas atzman, Ideal malachin machmas dovo acher, which means when we say that, let's take one example, easy example. Let's say asovin, weeds. When we say lachin, do we mean fresh weeds, naturally fresh and moist? Naturally, machmas atzman by themselves, and they are the ones that add heat, right? But the ones, or do we mean something may be dry but was artificially moist? Yeah, you added water to it. What's the difference? So Rashi says, you can see in the third line in Rashi, lachin machmas atzman, mecham was tfei milachin machmas amashkin shenoiflin aleihen mi sheyovshu, which means something natural is always better. If something is naturally moist, it adds heat and it's more, warms up more than something that's been dried and you just spritzed it with some water, right? That is the question. So how far do we go? Are we machmir only on something that's naturally moist, right? But something that is being humidified, that's wet artificially is okay? Or are we even machmir and say, no, even machmas dover acher, even if it's wet, stam, because for exterior kind of water, is that also considered as bad enough to be moisif hevel? That's a question. I mean, we know the reality. The question is, where does halacha draw the line? Yeah, do we only answer the most, the natural one, which is worse, or do we even answer the one that's less heating up, less mechamim, and that is the one that's artificially so? Baruch Hashem, Toshma. Let's see what the Bryce has to say. Well, look at the Mishnah first of all. Loy beteven, velo bezagim, velo bemoichin, velo basovim, bizman shen lachin. So we just read a whole load of, we just quoted the Mishnah. Yeah, the Mishnah told us, all these items, when they are moist, they are posul, treif, you can't do hatmono. Comes the Gemara to prove from one point, and that is moichin. What's moichin? Moichin are pieces of fabric. Now, those fabrics, at the moment, the way we see them now, in this stage in the sugya, the moichim are not, moichin means a lot of things. You see it in Rashi. All kinds of small pieces of cloth, before, after it's woven, after it's before woven, after woven. At this moment, we think that the what's the names, the moichin, are pieces of wool, right? We're not yet made into a fabric. Okay? Now, wool naturally is what? Says the Gemara like this. If you want to tell me that the lachim that we mean is lachim because of something else, it was dry and you wet it, yeah, you made it wet, then it makes a lot of sense that the moichin were wet by something else. I can take a piece of cloth, yeah, any stage before weaving, after weaving, and make it wet. Very easy to make cloth wet, yeah. If you want to tell me that it's lachin machmas atzman, in other words, that what's his name, pieces of wool are naturally lach, doesn't make sense. Moichin lachin machmas atzman hechim eshkachasla. How could that be? You never have fabric, if before it's fabric or even with raw wool, is never lach. It's dry. Yet tzemer is a dry thing. Actually, wool is very dry. My father was the big mumcha in these things, and whenever we had these sugyas, he was always good. But this is, yeah, he had a degree in textile engineering. He was very, very big mumcha in all these things, and I learned a lot from him. So wool is actually something very, very dry. Yeah, I mean, it's oily, but it's not wet, right? It's not wet. It's not as wet as a sovim or these things. So how can you have tzemer, which is naturally moist? Doesn't make sense. Naturally wet. Yeah. Answers the Gemara, "Mimalta debeini atmi." Oh, malta debeini atmi, which means atmi is the thighs. The malta limrot is like to pluck, to pull. In other words, there is one place in the animal's body where it's naturally very hot, and there the wool is actually naturally wet, yeah, or moist. Yeah, that's the only place in the body, and that is beini atmi, between the thighs. Yeah, in the area of the thighs, it's very hot. You know, that's where. Right? But human beings also, it's like very sweaty. Because it's sweaty, naturally sweaty, there, even when the animal, as you shear the wool, it's naturally wet. So therefore, no proof. So it could be really that your proof is wrong. Maybe the Mishnah only asks something that's naturally wet. You're asking, how do you have a naturally moist wool? There you are. One of the Beni Atmi. Why is it called Marta? Limrot is like to pull, to pluck. Because that area you can't shear the sheep. You have to just pull it out like that. Oh, comes the Gemara with a stronger question. There's a brayse about Rabbi Yoshia, toimnin b'ksus yevesha. Oh, ksus already, you can't say it means wool, because ksus means that it's been already woven into proper fabric. Ksus is a garment. So you're allowed to be matmin with a garment, like with with a blanket, right? If it's dry. But peiros yeveshin, you can take and put your things in dry fruit. Doesn't mean fruit, means dry wheat, dry kernels of wheat. Yeah, but if the blanket or your kapete is naturally wet, or if the fruit are naturally moist and fresh, then you can't. You're not allowed to, right? But the obvious question is, how could you have that? Mainly the natural wool, okay, you beat me there. But how can a piece of garment, yeah, that was, made in China, made in Turkey, naturally wet? It can get to it very quickly. But how do you say it's naturally wet? Can't be. So again, we must say that the Mishnah was machmir and even assered things that are unnaturally wet, even though they're less hot, even the ones that I just sprinkled with water. Answers Gemara, unbelievable. Mimata the Pediatmi, same answer, which means unbelievable. Those fabrics, if they were originally woven from that wool in that part in the animal's body, they stay naturally moist the whole time. Not wet like water, like you went to the swimming pool, but if it's made of that part of the body of the animal where it's so sweaty, even if you weave something out of those, they will still be naturally wet. Yeah. So maybe we spoke about those. It's not so mistaber, but you don't have your proof anymore. You can't prove to me that we're talking about, a blanket that's been wet artificially and that's still considered as an Isser. No, maybe that's mutter. Maybe the only one that's also something naturally wet. Okay? Can you turn off the lights, please? I'm sorry. Do you mind? Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, Rabbi Akiva, what do you want to tell us? מה? לא, זה לא דבר אחר. בגוף של הבמה, ככה היא מזיעה, ככה זה גדל. No, זה לא דבר אחר. ככה זה גדל בצורה יותר רטובה. Like some people have more oily hair and some have dry hair. No, it's that's how the animal grows. That grows in the animal. Today we're going to have a very interesting story time, very famous story, which I'm sure you heard before. And here is the source. A lot of fun. You hear stories all over, and then you see the source in the Gemara. Yeah? Says the Mishnah. Toimnin beksus. Oh, we just said that before. Toimnin beksus. One's allowed to bury and hide the cholent of Shabbos, whatever, in a ksus. Yeah, ksus, well, dry one. Let's say blanket. Ubepeiros, peiros also with fruit. Bekanfe yoina. Or kanfe yoina doesn't mean the wings of the yoina. It means the feathers. And really, I saw in the Rishonim lav davka of the yoina. Feathers in general, yeah, they may preserve the heat, but they do not add heat. That's very allowed to be toimen in them, yeah. Oh, these two last items are important. The source shel choroshim is called in English sawdust. Yeah, in other words, yeah, the small pieces of wood that as the carpenter works, they sort of fly off the main wood, and you have like that small sawdust pieces. You're allowed to be matmin in them. The oirish shel pishtan daka. The oirish shel pishtan daka, I saw the Meforshim saying, the oirish shel pishtan daka means you have the pishtan, the flax. When you comb it, you comb the flax when it's raw. You comb it, and as you comb, there are small pieces of flax. Thank you. The small pieces of flax, like all kinds of tiny pieces, they fall off the flax on the floor, and you can use them to hide to do the hatmona. They're not moisif hevel. Now we say daka. Only the psalis if it's very fine. The one that's very fine, not the one that's thick. Rabbi Yehuda oiser bedaka umatir begasa. Rabbi Yehuda says that the daka, the small one, you're not allowed to, and dafka, the big one, you are allowed to. Interesting. That will be at the end of the Gemara. Okay, fine. Now, why is daka or gasa better? I don't know at that stage. Maybe we'll see it later. But for now, Tanakama says that you're allowed to be matmin in the daka one, in the small, the fine one, and Rabbi Yehuda says dafka. Yeah, the daka is not good. The big one, I guess, big one makes sense. It doesn't hide as much. It's too big. The pieces they don't really cover the whole area. Maybe. Says the Gemara. Amar B'yanai. Because we mentioned the words kanfe yoino, the words kanfe yoino basically evoke, the need in the Gemara to tell us the story about kanfe yoino. Amar B'yanai. This is now halacha. Tefillin tzrichin guf noki ke Elisha bal knafayim. B'yanai says as follows: Tefillin, when you put on your tefillin, you need to have your body as clean as Elisha bal knafayim. What does that mean? So Elisha bal knafayim, we're going to see, was a person who was a big tefillin guy. He was, as the famous story goes, he risked his life in order to put on tefillin, and he had a big nace. That's the story upcoming now. But what we have to know, when we put on tefillin, before we put on tefillin, we have to be prepared, and we have to know you can't just put on your tefillin just like that. You have to be aware that your body has to be very clean as was the body of Elisha bal knafayim. There's a discussion. Who says his body was, why his body was clean? We assume that because he was so careful about tefillin, and he had a nace happening to him regarding tefillin, to do with tefillin, probably he kept all the mitzvahs and halachos and the prerequisites for tefillin. That's a pashup shot. So now, Maihi, what does it mean exactly that you have to know before you even start to put on tefillin that your body has to be as clean as Elisha bal knafayim? Practically, what do you mean? Tell me, I'm a Jew, I want to put on tefillin. What do you mean in practice? Says the Gemara Machloikis. Now, Rashi and Tosfos here, I think, complement each other. Let's start with Abaye. Abaye Omar, Shelo yafiach ben. Abaye says you should not, pass air. You have to make sure that you're in such a situation that, you should not come to a situation of passing air, having bad smell coming out as you put on the tefillin. Yeah, that's basically what we're saying, which means I'd like to read Rashi inside. It's very, very important to see Rashi. Rashi says, Shelo yafiach sheyochel lamid atzmo b'shas ha-ruach, or reach. In other words, you should be aware that if you have to, really, something's going to come out, you have to make sure to be ready and know you're such a guy that can contain and not let it go, right? That's according to Abaye. Now, Abaye is not okay, let's continue now for a minute. Rove says, Shelo yishan behen. Rove says you're not allowed to sleep with your tefillin on. Rashi, Shelo yishan behen, shema yafiach or yirekeri. Rava says as follows: make sure you're not tired, or about to sleep. Make sure you will not be in a situation that you'll fall asleep with your tefillin. Because if you're asleep, you're out of control. Then anything can happen, bad smell, or even worse, Kelly, you're asleep, who knows? Aval, says Rashi, in other words, Abaye it's as if Rav is more Mekel, according to Rashi. Rav says, my only concern is make sure don't put your tefillin when you're about to fall asleep. Make sure that, be smart, plan in advance, not going to fall asleep. Because once you fall asleep, out of the game. But She'en can, to get ready and make sure you don't have to pass air, says Rava, most people are like that anyways. It's not a concern. It's naturally so. You don't have to make a cheshbon to go to toilet. You have to obviously go to toilet, not need to the bathroom. But Rava says it's not a concern by me. So according to Rashi, the Pasuk Pshat of Rashi, what does it sound like? That it's a one-way machloikas, right? Because Abaye would tell you surely not to sleep, right? So it sounds like. Yeah, from Rashi, I think so. Rava says, I'm only concerned about you falling asleep, completely losing control. But as long as you're awake, I'm sure you can handle the reach, the reach coming out. No need to have a whole plan. And Abai says no. Abai says no. You have to make sure you're not you hold it back. Now, what would Abai say about falling asleep? According to Rashi, it sounds like Abai would say for sure it's a problem. Kol shekain. But Tosfos says no. Abai, look at this as Abai Omar. This says Abai Omar Shalofiach Ben Shiyuchal Lishmo Atzmim Lafiach Ad Shiasir Tefillin. Could be a contrast, right? Make sure that you can hold back the bad smell coming out before you take off your tefillin. Aval lo chai shema yishan. Wow. The afal gav, sometimes you may fall asleep. Interesting, right? According to Tosfos, it's a mutual machlokas. Abai says, I'm not concerned you'll fall asleep. I'm more concerned that you will not contain yourself from the bad air, but he's not concerned about you falling asleep. But Rashi, I don't think so. Yeah, but Lemaisa, if we look at Rashi and Tosfos together, a wholesome picture, each one is concerned more about another thing. Abai is concerned you have to make sure that your bowel movement, whatever it is, or your nature, an old man, let's say, can control so much. Make sure, and if it comes, he'll be able to control my bad smell. By sleeping, I know I'm not going to fall asleep. Yeah, but Shenka, it's not such a concern. And Rav is the other way around. He's less concerned about a facho, more concerned about falling asleep. That's if we combine everyone together. Now the question is the amai kari by the halacha lemaisa. Oh, halacha lemaisa. My friends, this is very nogel halacha, and it's not a chiddush at all. As I told you 5,000 times, it's not a halacha shir, but we all know, unless you belong to Zilberman or some other groups, most of us, sadly so, we don't put on tefillin the whole day. Why? Because of this. Because we are concerned about hafocha. Yeah, maybe also about falling asleep, but we're concerned about the whole business, and that's why we don't put on tefillin the whole day. Because throughout the day, we may come to whatever bad smell, also maybe irhurim, other things, because we can't contain ourselves in that holy situation physically and spiritually. That's why we only put on tefillin during davening, not the whole day. That's the reason. Otherwise, we should have had it the whole day. It is better to have it the whole day. Now let's continue. Why is this choshev a guy, Elisha, the choshev a man? Why is it called Bal Knafayim? He was very concerned. He was very careful with the mitzvah of tefillin. Why is it called Bal Knafayim, the master of the wings? What do you mean? What does that have to do with anything? You should know Rome are always called Malchus Harisho. The Romans were very wicked people. So the wicked kingdom, the wicked government of Rome, Gzeira al Israel, they made a Gzeira, Shekol Maniach Tefillin Nakos Moichoy. Whoever puts on Tefillin Lo Aleinu, they would basically make a hole in his head. Yeah, Chas v'sholem, mamish, perforate his head, Lo Aleinu, Mida keneged Mida. And what did he do? V'hoya Elisha Menicham. Elisha didn't care. He would put on his tefillin, v'yoytze l'shuk. He would publicly wear his tefillin. Wow. Okay, interesting. Yoytze l'shuk. So now we're going to talk about Mesiras Nefesh later in Tosfos. Ra'au kasdor echod. Rashi says kasdor is called minstrel. Yeah, a special soldier, or I would say policeman, that was in charge of enforcing the law. And that kasdor saw that Jew is breaking the law, right? He's wearing tefillin, walking around with his tefillin on. Ratz miponov. So now Elisha at that point ran away from him. Yeah, then Ratz achov. The soldier ran after him. Yeah, was pursuing him. Eventually, the Roman soldier, the Roman policeman, unsurprisingly, he won the race. He caught up with him. Notlon miroishoy. Now, Elisha at that point took the tefillin off from his head, ve'achzan b'yodoy, and held it closed in his hand. Now, Omar Loy, the soldier told him, Maza b'yodcho, what is it in your hand? Omar Loy, kan feyoino. It's kan feyoino. The Mefarshim say that he said kan feyoino because he did not mean to lie or to rely on a miracle that these are kan feyoino, but he really meant to talk about them in the spiritual sense of the are kan feyoino. Because really, as we're going to see soon, tefillin are compared, or other mitzvahs are compared to the wings of a dove. So he spoke to him philosophically speaking. What I have over here, what's kan feyona? Protection. Like the knafayim that protect the dove, I have something that protects me over here because he really believed in it. And then poshet is yodoy. Well, obviously the policeman said, "Open your hand." Yeah, poshet is yodoy. He then opened his hand, extended his hand. Uvenimtzu kan feyoino. Lo and behold, really there were kan feyoino. Instead of tefillin, what was inside were the knafayim, were the wings of a dove. Wow. Lafikach koronois Elisha bal knafayim. That's why it's called Elisha bal knafayim. Elisha, the master of the knafayim, of the wings. Now the question is, why did he call it that way, and why did it become that way? Yeah, both from Elisha's side and the Kodesh Baruch Hu's side, Elisha decided tefillin are kan feyoina. Why not? I don't know. Beautiful light. Why kan feyoina? And why did Hashem really turn it into kan feyoina? Yeah, when you like birds, fine. But why is it dafka kan feyoina more than any other bird? Why not the knafayim of I don't know, raven? You want the kosher animal? Knafayim of a duck, of a swan. That's really nice. Yeah. Why? Why? Why dafka yoina? Mishum de atil knesses amtil knesses Israel leyoina. Because knesses Israel are compared. Amtil is a kmoshol. The nimshal they compared to a yoina. Shenemar, it says kanfe yoina nechbe bekesef. Yeah, kanfe yoina, the knafayim of a yoina nechba bekesef. They're covered with silver. We're going to see what that means. Yeah, that 1 second. Yeah, kanfe yoina nechba. They are like covering. Lechapot is to cover, right? There, what does it mean? The knafayim are like a cover for the yoina. What does it mean for us? My yoina knafem meginos aleo, afison mitzvos meginos alein. Very good. Just like the yoina, the wings of the dove protect the dove more than other birds. Apparently, it says, and so too the mitzvahs they protect Klal Yisrael. He kept the mitzvah protected him. Look at Rashi. Knafem meginos aleho. Yeah, the second to last Rashi before the Mishnah, before Matznit in Shlochin. Knafem meginos aleho. It's quite it's higher than where the text of the Gemara is. Knafem meginos aleho mean hatzina mikol ois ve'odam avoleh. Yeah, the wings protected from the cold and also from any other enemy, either another animal or human beings. In ilchemes umaka berosh gopea. It fights and mamish maka, it hits the enemy with the tip of the wings. Well, other birds don't do that. Yeah, maybe other kosher birds don't do that. I don't know. But lamaisa, that's special, and that's why some people, the way they roll up their tefillin is a kan feyoina, right? Like the roll on both sides, right? Especially tefillin shel rosh, because it looks like wings that are protecting the tefillin. So tefillin protect us, and he knew that, and that's related to it, and that's what Hakadosh Baruch Hu did. Now, the obvious question is that we're going to see now in Tosfos is, what was the story of Elisha bal knafayim? Did he really have to put on tefillin and risk his life and go to the street? And on the other hand, when he saw the cast door, he did run away and he did hide it, right? So what was his attitude over here, right? He didn't. Yeah. Eventually, when the Roman guy actually came, he quickly hid it. He didn't stay with it in your face. Why would have done one way or over the other? Look at Tosfos. Netola meroisha, the first wide line. Frekt Tosfos. Tosfos has a question. The afal gav damrina besanedrin. B'shas shmad afilu al mitzvah kala yehorig val yavo. In the times of shmad, when goyim actually tell you you have to do an avera as a gzera. We now declared, now Jews have to actually break the halacha. Then what do we say? Even on the slightest mitzvah, you have to be killed and don't break don't be over the mitzvah. Don't transgress. Even to change the color of your shoelaces. If all Jews wear black shoelaces, and the Goyim said the Jews will now wear red shoelaces, it's not even a mitzvah. It's maybe we can work around it. No, if it's gezerah, if it's an official decree of the Goyim, you're supposed to be moist nefesh even in the smallest mitzvah. The logic being because they're going to use like the salami system. In other words, today's the sroich, later it's going to be something else. Don't give in even for the smallest area in halacha. Even for the seemingly less important part of halacha, don't give in to goyish decrees. Otherwise, they will take over completely. If it's not time of Xera, we all know that Gimel Averes Chamuras. It's time a goy comes to you and he tells you, no, cook me something for Shabbos. He doesn't know you're Jewish. I'll kill you if you don't cook on Shabbos. He's a mafioso. He doesn't know it's Shabbos. He doesn't know you're a Jew. Stam. Then you cook on Shabbos, so he shouldn't kill you. But if it's a Xera, no, even the smallest thing. If so, the question now is, so why didn't Elisha go all the way? Why did he take off the tefillin? Because maybe taking off the tefillin is an avera, right? Assuming again you're supposed to be with the tefillin all day long, like they used to. Taking off the tefillin is like taking off your kippah. We can relate to that better. Take off your kippah because the goyim told you shouldn't. Yes, why did he take off? Answers to us. I knew when he changes the color of his shoe or his shoelace, he now looks like a goy. Somebody tells you take off the kippah, cut off your pious. It's not such a big avera, yeah. You're not shaving the pious. You shouldn't look like a goy, but you look like a goy. It looks as if you are not part of Klal Yisrael. You are actively now looking like a goy, not like a Jew, right? And it involves even the smallest isser, if at all. But you look like a goy actively. Bad news. Don't do that, even if they're going to kill you. And in their faces, you don't do that. Yeah, even if the guy sees you straight face to face, the cast door. Over here, when he doesn't have tefillin, he's not actively doing something bad. He's not looking like a guy. 1 hour, 1 moment of the day, he doesn't have tefillin. Look at all of us now. We don't have tefillin. Did you have tefillin today, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Should I interrogate you? I didn't. Right? We don't have tefillin anyhow all the time. Right? So Mimela, it doesn't look so different. A lot of Jewish people don't have tefillin all day long. They have tefillin part of the day. And so too, it doesn't look so bad. So Lemaisa Elisha, interestingly enough, at the moment of truth, when it was a question of life or death, what did he do? He had every right to take off his tefillin and look like a guy who doesn't have tefillin right now. However, originally, he did go out to the street with the tefillin because that wasn't yet Sakonas Nefashis. Interesting. That's a big chiddush, which, to be honest, I don't really understand. I'm left with a question because it's quite evident the way the Gemara says it. The Brisa says he went out to the street with the tefillin on, so he had some kind of in-your-face attitude. But as long as it wasn't sakana gemura, as long as it wasn't mamish mid-air, collision, as I like to call it, it wasn't mamish a threat. It was like a suffix, and maybe then he still put on his tefillin. Interesting. Yeah, he could have avoided that too. He could have put on tefillin at home, half an hour, 20 minutes, put them, hide them in the house and go out without tefillin. So that much he didn't do. In that situation of maybe I'll be caught, maybe I won't be caught, he still had this tefillin on. Only when it was real sakana, then he used Tosfos's, logic. I don't know why. I'm asking a question, I don't have an answer. Hear my question. Because he could have used Tosfos's logic, why get into trouble? Maybe want to give chizuk to other people. Maybe felt there was a bit of maybe not wearing tefillin in the street at all, and nobody sees any Jew with a tefillin would demoralize the Jews. Maybe it is a bit like Rakta the Masana. I don't know. I'm contemplating. But Lamai said the moment of truth, he had the permission to take off his tefillin only because not everyone wears tefillin anyways. Weiter. The next verse is very, very beautiful with a lot of musar. The next Tosfos, that's a short one. The following Tosfos, how do we say? How is it that the wings protect the dove? The Yeah, all other birds, when they're tired, they rest. They go to a sela, they rest. Cup of coffee, newspaper, yeah, what? The rest over the rock on a stone. The yoina leklal Israel never stops. When it's tired, it never really rests. It rests, yeah, but with one wing, it keeps flying. It keeps some kind of activity. Like a Jew should never rest. We're always involved with mitzvahs. You go to rest, you open a little safer. You go to rest, say Krishma Lamita. Yeah, there's always a mitzvah involved. So I'm saying that's what I think that's what this comes to allude to that. Okay, now let's see about the Nesoires. So that, by the way, the same story exactly appears in Daf Kuf Lamed Amud Aleph, the bottom of the page. Be'ezras Hashem will get there. Yeah, there it talks about a different aspect. Weiter. Benesoires shel charoshin. So we mentioned in the Mishnah two items that are, how shall I say, powder-like. Yeah, the sawdust. Yeah, the fine sawdust of the carpenters, and also the Urshel Pishtan, the tiny little pieces of flax of the fabric, yeah, of the textile. That also both, and that's daka. If it's thin, you're not allowed to be matmin in that. And Rabbi Yehuda says thin is okay, and thick, and thin is not okay, and a thick one is okay. Now, the question is, Iboilu. There's a question now on Rabbi Yehuda. Iboilu. Rabbi Yehuda, anesor shel charoshin kai, oy aneoris shel pishtan kai. Oh, when Rabbi Yehuda spoke, and he argued, and he said that I think that the daka is bad, and the big one is good, did he relate to the social charoshin, to the sawdust of the wood, or did he relate to the pishtan? Which one did he kai? Tashma de Tanya, it says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Neor Shel Pishtan Daka Hareu Kazevel. Rabbi Yehuda says the Neor Shel Pishtan, the one of the flax, if it's thin, it's like zevel, and zevel is moisef evel. So you see that the thin one, he says no. If you have a lot of small pieces of the Neor Shel Pishtan, the last item to be mentioned, they are as bad as zevel. They add heat, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe because they're very thin, they envelop the whole thing. From here we know that when he argued, it was only about the Oros Shel Pishtan, not about the Nesoris. The Nesoris Shel Charoshim, he did not argue about, and the Nesoris Shel Charoshim seems to be no argument, and everyone agrees that the Daka is actually okay. The Daka is okay, right? I think Daka and Kol Shekin Gasa. To be honest with you, I did not prepare that piece so well exactly, and I want to go back there tomorrow. I would stop here with your permission. I'm sorry the show is shorter, but today I couldn't prepare further. I don't like to, give show unprepared. So I wanted tomorrow, Bli Neder, I hope to clarify better. Yeah, the Rosh Pishtan and the Charoshin. And tomorrow we'll continue to the Mishnah. Tomorrow we have a very fascinating daf. You have to be here tomorrow, because first because Jason is back, that's one reason. And secondly, because tomorrow we're going to see very interesting Makor. Why do we have 39 melachas? Why they divided this way and not any other way? Yeah, because you could have cut up the melachas of the Mishkan to all types of numbers. Yeah, you can categorize them differently. Tomorrow we're going to see why Dafka 39. We're going to mention the story of Yosef Atzadik and Eshes Potifar. We're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. So, Bezos Hashem, see you tomorrow. Apologize, I didn't prepare the whole thing, but Bezos Hashem, tomorrow we'll get more into the Neoris Nesoris and continue. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for coming. Hatzlacha uvracha. Thank you. Welcome back.